2018 Alfa Romeo 4C. Today's episode, we'll be doing the timing belt. So it's back here, as most of you with a 4C know. And so in order to get to that, you need to remove the passenger side quarter panel. So let's get started. Obviously, the first thing you're going to want to do, besides getting the vehicle prepared on a rack and the right safety lift points, you're going to remove the passenger rear wheel and wheel well liner. Once you remove that, you're going to come in here and remove the inner trunk liner. But first, let's get this wheel and wheel well liner off so I can show you why we need to get that off first. Okay, so to get this wheel well liner off, you got 1, 2, 3 5mm hex bolts, and then you also have, this customer's missing a couple, but 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips head bolts. Take those off, and then this wheel well liner comes off. And to get the wheel off, as you already probably know, there's 5 17mm bolts, lug bolts. So we'll get this wheel well liner taken off. I'll show you what's underneath. Wheel well liner has been removed. This is what it looks like. Customer has an aftermarket cold air intake. But yeah, this is what's in the wheel well liner of the 4C on the passenger side. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is lower the car down, pull out the trunk liner, which is this big box here. I'll show you guys on the other end. And so that way we can start taking this quarter panel off here. One key thing I should have mentioned, when we start taking, after we take off all the push pins and everything, still got to take this guy out, but you're going to want to take out 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's another one under here. It goes right there, number 5. I take this one off just to be safe. It's a T30, and it looks like this on this side. But yeah, just take those off, and what you're going to do is you're going to remove this weather strip simply by pulling it up, but keep in mind where it lines up on which groove, because a lot of people will put these on backwards and put them on incorrectly. Also, there's a line here where the two halves meet as far as when they manufacture the weather strip. Always try to line that up in the center. It's a good reference point. Yeah, go ahead and take this off. You're also going to take the these 2 trim pieces here, which try and get it out for you here so I can show you what it looks like. And you got to be very careful not to hit the paint or anything. This customer has a wrap and don't want to damage the wrap, so that's what it looks like. We're going to do that to both sides. There's the trunk box, and this is what it looks like once you remove it. I'm not going to lie to you, it is a struggle. It is a tight fit. And one thing I want to mention is this is the wiring to the trunk light. When you take the trunk light out, it fits right here. Chances are, if it's been removed previously by another shop or technician, more than likely it's probably going to be broken. I'll show you on this one here. Somebody put some goopy stuff to try and just get it to stay. These things are somewhat fragile because they do get hot when you have the trunk open. So the plastic is very brittle, but just be careful of that. Do your best not to break it. So now that we got the trunk liner out, I'm going to start making progress on taking off this quarter panel. So we're going to remove this nut as well as I don't know if you can see it. This bolt here. Actually, no, you know what? We're not gonna take that bolt off. We're gonna take this bolt off. Basically, any of the bolts that bolt up to the quarter panel is the ones that we're taking off. Like this one, that one. Just keep in mind which ones go where, because they are different sizes. I'm gonna lift this thing up so I can show you guys the other bolts. But also there's two here for this cover, and there's one underneath it that holds the filler neck to the quarter panel. So I'll get this thing up so I can show you the underside of it, and where all the securing bolts for the quarter panel are, as well as behind the door. All right, so now that we got the trunk line around, we got the car up in the air, these are the ones you're gonna take off. 10 millimeter here, it's a nut. I kind of see where my finger is going here. There's a 10 millimeter nut there. 10 millimeter nut there. 10 millimeter nut right here. Just behind the vent here, there's a 10 millimeter bolt on top. You're taking the top one, not the side one, the top one. Taking that one off. And then you are also, you can see that nut there. Let's see if I get in the camera view there. That guy back there. Little focus on it. There you go. You're taking him off. You're also going to take off this 10 millimeter bolt here, and you come down to the side here on the like the front of the quarter panel, taking off this T30, one T30. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 T30s there as well. And then I'll lower it down and I'll show you the ones that we're getting on top. This is just gonna be for the filler neck, and then there's one more hiding over here behind the weather strip. Okay, got the car back down. Now what we're gonna do is take off these two T30 bolts to remove this cover, and I'll show you what's behind that. After you get the cover off, you got yet another T30. Take that one off and it'll loosen up the filler neck from the quarter panel. After we get that, coming around to the back again, and we're gonna go ahead and take this guy off so we have more flexibility with the bumper. So we could just pull the bumper back ever so slightly, probably about a ½ inch or so, to free up the studs that are coming off of the bumper for the quarter panel, that travel through the quarter panel, as you can see. Then we're gonna take this guy right here off, and I believe that should be it. Oh, no. I told you guys there was one more bolt, and there it is. It's right behind here. I don't know if I'll be able to get it so I can show you guys, but there it is. That sucker right there is a 5 millimeter hex. Very important. Make sure you take that off or you will break. You will break. Fiberglass quarter panel, and you don't want to do that. So make sure you get that 5 millimeter hex there, T30 bolt there, T30 bolt here like we did for this side, and this 10 millimeter nut. Let's get that off. Okay, so I took those bolts out, and I was lightly starting to separate everything and tug and make sure, you know, on the right areas I was pulling to make sure that everything was loose. I realized this corner is still stuck. I'm like, well, I got all the bolts out. Where am I going wrong? Well, there is 2 nuts right there, 10 millimeter nuts. And there's also that guy right there, 10 millimeter bolt that I loosened so you guys can see that. But yeah, take that 10 millimeter out and those 2 10 millimeter nuts. And then this thing should come out. So let's see. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was correct. Don't worry, it's not touching the ground. Do not scratch it. Just be sure that you take great care when you're pulling it off, because you do not want to damage the paint and or scratch anything. So this is the area where we will be working. Timing belt is behind this cover. We'll be removing the engine mount, obviously. Everything here is somewhat of a tight fit. I will admit I got a lot more space than on a Fiat. I do Fiat timing belts all the time. And so this is not really anything too much different in comparison. So next thing up, I think I'm gonna do just a couple things to kind of free up some space. I'm gonna get this out of the way, which is, if I'm not mistaken, two 10mm bolts. And I'm gonna mark these hoses because you can mix these up. If you mix this hose and this hose up, you will get no turbo. So keep that in mind. And don't ask me how I know. But yeah, let's go ahead and take this and move it off to the side or out of the way completely, those 210s. So we went ahead and took that guy off, and now tons of more space. You're gonna take off the 5mm hex bolts that secure the cover, and you're going to also disengage this clip here that holds the wiring and move this off to the side. It gets clipped back here. Once you got that off, then this cover just pops right off like that. Next, we're gonna lift the car up, take off the lower shield here, foot on it right there, and lower it back down and stick a jack under so we could take this engine mount off. So this is the cover we're taking off. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bolts it looks like. Hope I didn't miss any, but if I did, you'll know. It's whatever is attaching this to the rear diffuser, as well as this cover plate here. They're all T30s, so let's get those out of the way. All right, we got the undercover off. Next thing we're gonna wanna do is remove the serpentine belt. In order to do so, we need to pull the tensioner, which is this guy here. And there we go. On that tensioner is a 15mm bolt. What you're gonna do is you're going to get a super long wrench like this. Sorry, I tried to do this with one freaking hand. Hopefully I can get it on there. Get it on like that. And then you're going to pull the wrench towards the axle to release the tension and slide the belt off. We got the serpentine belt off. Next, we're gonna take this guy off, removing these special bolts. I will give you guys a part number and a size in just a second so that we can take those off. Now, you notice these are not normal Torx bits. I forget what these are called. If someone wants to comment to remind me, but this is the size you're going to use. This is an MR8 or an M8. This is the kit that I had purchased off of Amazon. It's by ATD. There's the part number for you for this kit. If you're going to be doing this, 4C uses a lot of these. The newer Julias and Stelvios also have some of these sprinkled in here and there, but yeah, we're gonna go ahead and take the M8 and we're gonna take off those 4 crankshaft pulley bolts and get that thing off. All right, crankshaft pulley is off. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get a lot of this stuff out of the way here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this protective shield for the alternator off. There's a 10 on this side, and then there's also a 10 on the other side that we're gonna be taking off. Once we get those off and we remove this cover, we'll go ahead and loosen up and remove the bolt securing the alternator and move the alternator off to the side if it's feasible. If not, then I'll just be pulling the alternator all the way out, but I'd rather not because I don't want to have to fight with this coolant hose being in the way and whatnot. So yeah, we're gonna get this alternator out next. After the alternator, then we'll go ahead and take off the engine mounts. But for now, let's just focus on this. Right, so we got the cover off, which was a pain in the butt. Now we got 1, 2, and there's one underneath here. I don't think I'll be able to get it on camera, but I'm not gonna be able to. There's 3 13mm bolts. Take all 3 of those out and lay the alternator off to the side. If you choose to disconnect it, make sure you disconnect the battery over there. And then you're gonna take off the 13mm nut that secures the main power wire. And I believe there's an 8mm here that secures the other wire that goes back there. So yeah, but for now, for me, what I do is take these 13s out and put the alternator off to the side. Alternator is safely out of the way. Next up, we're going to be taking off the engine mount, and what that requires is to remove this bracket, which is secured by 2 10s in order to access that 15mm there. We're going to remove that 15mm. I'm going to loosen this guy up. This is a 15, this is a 15, so just grab a wrench, put on this side, take this nut off or loosen it, and then just slide this out, this bar, torque bar, and then you're gonna take off 1, 2, 15mm. But obviously before you do this, you're gonna wanna put a jack with a 2x4 underneath, or a piece of wood underneath the oil pan to properly secure the engine, so that way when you take these off, the engine just doesn't fall down to the ground, and then you'll be in a world of trouble. But yeah, so get the jack under the engine, take off the 2 10s, the 15, loosen or remove the 15mm nut, take off the 2 15mm bolts here, and then we're taking off 3 18mm nuts. Those 3 will come off, and then this entire assembly will come off of the vehicle. This will be left behind, which is going to be our next emphasis of attack. So let's go ahead and get that off. Engine mounts out of the way. Next up, we're going to get this tensioner out of the way for the serpentine belt. And that bolt right there is holding them. It's a T50. We're going to get a T50 in there and remove that. All right, so we got the serpentine belt tensioner out, which was a huge pain in the ass, as well as the idler pulley for the serpentine belt. Next up, we're taking this off. So we have 4 13mm bolts, one here, another one here, another one here, and the other 13 is up here. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the other bolts here, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all 15s. So we're gonna take those off, and we'll get this out of the way. Alrighty, now that that's out of the way, it all makes sense now. So at the bottom we have the crankshaft. This here is your timing belt tensioner, idler pulley here, water pump here, intake manifold or intake side camshaft, exhaust camshaft. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to install our special tools to lock down the crank as well as both cams. In order to lock down both cams, what we're gonna have to do is come over to this side, and we're gonna have to remove the vacuum pump. I've already disconnected the hose going to, but I'm gonna remove the vacuum pump, install our cam locker there, and we're also gonna remove this cap here on the other cam for the intake side and install that locker tool. Once we do that, then we can install the crankshaft locking tool. But in order to do that, we got to get these two caps off, see where the cams are at in coordination with where the tools are supposed to go, and then line it up by simply either turning the crank over until it lines up, or just putting a wrench on the cam bolts and turning them slightly. But I typically don't like to do that. I usually like to do it from the crank. So let's go ahead and pull this guy off and that guy off, and go from there. Starting to make a little bit more sense now, ain't it? Cams, water pump, idler pulley, timing belt tensioner, crank. We get the vacuum pump off, get the specialty tools, lock it down, and move on. All right, so we went ahead and took off the vacuum pump. We had 4 5mm bolts, hex bolts, 5mm hex bolts. And then we took off the cover on the other guy here, and that was 3 10mm bolts. So next, we're gonna take our special tools we get from FCA, and we are going to line this bad boy up. All right, so we got the crankshaft specialty tool there, locking down the crank. And then we come to this side, and we got both tools over here holding down each cam. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and loosen the timing belt tensioner, remove the belt, remove the tensioner, remove the idler pulley, remove the water pump. So all that's getting replaced. So that's next. Okie dokie. So we had to go ahead and remove the specialty tool on the crank in order to get the timing belt off, which I think is kind of interesting, but it is what it is. So we removed the timing belt, obviously, because the tensioner is loose and we got the belt off. So next we're gonna go ahead and replace the water pump since we're here, and with the tensioner and the idler pulley, I believe, is in the kit that we have. So we'll go ahead and replace these 3, and then we will loosen these up with a 30mm. Actually, sorry, we'll remove these with the 30mm socket, and then after that you will see the Allen head bolts that are behind, and we have to loosen for each cam sprocket. So first things first, let's get the water pump off, replace these pulleys, and move on. All right, so we got the new water pump installed, new tensioner installed, new idler pulley installed. We're gonna go ahead and slide the belt into place. We have already cleaned and degreased all the coolant off of the back side here, so it's all dry. All we're gonna do is just set the timing belt in place, and then put our specialty tool to lock down the crank again, and then we'll work our way back up here. So, got our timing belt back on. There's our holding tool for the crank. I went ahead and took off the 2 caps I was talking about right there. 30mm, remember that. Something I want to go over real quick because I forgot the last clip was the water pump bolts. These guys here, there's only 2. They are both 6mm hex bolts. 6mm hex. The timing belt tensioner bolt is a 12mm. And the idler pulley over here for the timing belt is a 15mm. If you want to turn the crank once you're done, that is a 19mm. So lot of confusing sizes here. I don't know why, but you know, that's Alfa for you. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna loosen these 2 bolts. I'm not gonna take them out, just gonna break them loose. So that way the cam sprockets can move. When we go to reinstall the timing belt completely, we can put the proper amount of tension on the tensioner and then lock them down and then lock down the cam bolts. These are T55s. So there's 2 of them. I'm gonna go ahead and break them loose right now. All right, so we got our timing belt all laid in. Proper tension on the belt. Now, this tensioner, you want this, and service information doesn't clarify this crap. So I had to go to my training book and look this up, but this pointer right here on the tensioner has to aim right there perfectly with the circle behind it. Not that guy. Not this guy here. This has to point to this hole behind it. And the reason why it looks a little off is because my camera's like slightly off center, but you can kind of see it there. Perfectly centered. That's where it's supposed to be. Next thing I gotta do is go ahead and torque these bolts down. I'll give you the torque spec for that once I'm done. But yeah, once we torque these down, we can start reassembly. And for me, I had to reference my training book for this, and it shows you the proper specs for the tension on the belt and where it's supposed to aim at and all that good stuff. So this is what I followed. The service information was completely garbage. It did not have any good pictures of this, so yeah. Torque these down, I'll be right back. So we went ahead and put the caps back on, but before we did that, we torqued the camshaft sprocket bolts to 60 Newton meters plus a 25-degree angle turn. 60 Newton meters, 25-degree angle turn. Caps are 26 Newton meters. So this bad boy is all put together. We're gonna go ahead and take off the timing tools, the crank and the cam, but that is going to be in part 2 on the reassembly video. I want to thank all you guys for watching. Special shout out to my man, Germs DNA. Check out his YouTube page. Guy's awesome. Has awesome content. This is his vehicle. So yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.